Hi guys, just looking at raising some seedlings. So I generally buy seeds and grow my own seedlings rather than buying seedlings. It's a lot cheaper this way. It's not that much more work. You're probably adding about a month to the process. So I was just using some compost here. So this is compost that I make myself. It's mainly lawn clippings, but also green waste, offcuts from green vegetables and stuff that I might be eating, or anything that can break down. I've got a few different things I want to grow here. A bit of lettuce, green mignonette is always a good one for lunch. Um, English spinach, which are very small plants but very tasty. You need a lot of them though. And leeks are a really big favourite of mine. I've got some eggplants here, a couple of packets. So I'm going to try some of them. I'm also trying some flowers this year. Some carnations, they're actually out of date, so I'm not sure if they'll work. Got asters. You can just see on the back of the seeds they tell you when to plant and also whether to how deep to plant them. Got straw flowers. So these straw flowers will be some that I'll be putting in, raising as seedlings as well. Some dahlias, I might hold off on them because I also have some dahlias growing in the garden. I don't want to make crosses. I've got some old varieties I don't want to, sort of make lesser quality. Petunia, that's another favourite of mine. So really getting some petunias in there. Some more straw flowers there. Marigolds, they'll actually be direct seeded into the garden bed, so I won't be raising them as seedlings. And I've got some foxglove as well. These ones are a bit out of date, so I don't know if they'll work, but I'll put them in just to have a look, see what happens. I've also got some special varieties of tomato, and for the tomatoes I've actually bought some potting mix. And the reason why I've done that is because I have a lot of tomato seeds in the compost. So when I use my compost, I often get sort of wild tomatoes coming up. So I want to be able to tell the difference between the seed of the special varieties I've got here, like Oxheart and Roma and whatnot. So I want to make sure that I'm growing these seeds and I'm not growing some wild seeds that have ended up in my compost. I find so Roma's a great one for salad sandwiches. I find often with the and Rouge de Marmade, and I find that with the wild tomatoes that I often get, which might be second or third generation, they tend to revert to cherry tomatoes. So that's the reason why I'm using bought compost for the tomatoes there. So all I do here is just make some little furrows. I'll just pull some compost to the end of the tray, and I'll be covering over the seeds with that later. So I'm just making a bed in which I'll sprinkle the seeds, and then I'll cover the seeds over with compost when I've finished. This is quite coarse, this compost, and I was a little bit concerned about whether or not it'd be ideal for growing seeds, but I think it'll be fine, and we'll see later on that it's worked out quite well. Just goes to show that even in quite coarse material, you can raise seeds effectively. It's coarse because it hasn't broken down completely. This is borderline mulch, but for the purposes of raising seeds, that's generally fine. You just need a nice substrate for those seeds to grow in. You need something that holds onto water, but something that isn't restricting that root development either. So just going along here and creating the seed bed. Sometimes I'll just use my hands as well. And this will be, now I've got a platform where I can sprinkle the seeds onto this and then cover it over. A good little trick here, and this is what they look like covered over. So what I've done here is I've sprinkled the seeds and then I've put the compost back on top of the seeds. And I'll just chuck the label underneath the tray, and this allows me to remember what's what. So I'm just sowing some straw flowers here. So just sprinkling them on, trying to get a nice even dispersion. That's right, so those two trays there, the straw flowers, sprinkle them on. None left now. And as you can see on the back here, there's instructions on how deep they need to be planted. Some things like petunias actually don't get buried at all, they just get sprinkled straight on top. So I'm just putting, with straw flowers they do need to be buried slightly. So following the instructions on the back of the packet, I'm just sprinkling some of my compost over the top here. I'll just bed that down and it'll all get watered in. And I'm just chucking that label under the tray and this is the way that I keep a track of what's what. Otherwise, it's very easy to forget what's in what tray until they're coming up, and then you're trying to remember how they look from the seedlings. It's time for some watering. Just use a normal watering can. Just going to run along here and just water all that in. And it's important to, with compost, if compost gets too dry, it can become a little bit water repellent. So it's important to always keep the moisture up to this. And I find that in the early days, when you're germinating those seeds, so in the first week or so, I'd be watering up to 3 times a day. As the seeds develop and you get kind of a coverage of leaves, that kind of has the effect of holding a little bit more moisture in the soil. But if you've got a lot of windy weather like we do at the moment, and if you have wind is the worst one, but wind and hot weather, then when it's just the bare soil, you've really got to keep the water up to it. And I'm just watering them tomatoes in as well. You see I've just chucked the tomato labels underneath the rows of punnets that I've put those tomatoes in. So that's all been watered in. Quite wet, and I just want to make sure that the water gets all the way through that tray, and we're just wetting that up, keeping it moist so that it doesn't get to the point where it's repelling water. So you just want to give them a really good water in, especially when you just planted the seeds. The seeds need to absorb, I think it's something like 5 times their weight in water to germinate, so there's quite a lot of water needed to germinate a seed, and the quicker you get that water in, the quicker they can germinate, and the quicker you'll get seedlings. This is just 2 weeks later, and you can see here we've got some seeds coming up already. It's been really quick actually. I think it's just the warm weather and not, like I was saying, just that regular watering. A lot of tomatoes here. I think the tomatoes will probably need to be thinned out, or I can just plant them as very small seedlings. Might not hurt to thin them out altogether. These are the leeks. There's a few other things coming up in there too, just seeds that were in the compost, but those leeks are showing. These are carnations, and I don't think they're going to work. I think the carnations are too old. These are their straw flowers, and the straw flowers are coming on really well. You can see that they're really loving that. And we've got the petunias here as well. The petunias are still very small, but after 2 weeks, it's quite good. And we've got our eggplant. So we've got 2 trays of eggplant here. Going to get a huge amount of eggplant seeds. I'm going to be absolutely swamped in eggplant. Bit of lettuce there, and we've got our English spinach starting to come on here. A very spidery looking seedling to begin with, English spinach. It's quite funny, they do fill out later on. And this is another 2 weeks later. So those tomatoes are thickened up a bit. I think I do need to thin them out. I think they're taking a bit too long to grow. This is the English spinach, and as you can see, the leaves are starting to fill out. They really need to get planted now. You can see some leaves paling off, probably due to some nutrient deficiencies. So you don't want to keep stuff in trays for too long. There's also just a wild cucumber that's popped up in the back there. It's probably sitting in some compost. And you can see the petunias there too. So the petunias are coming on really well. This is the lettuce. I've already planted some lettuce. The lettuce has really come on quick, and you can see in that tray just on the ground there, I've got kind of way more than I can fit. It's coming on really well in the trays. I've been putting some lettuce into the gardens as well, but I don't want to put too much at once because I'll end up having all these lettuce plants maturing together. You can see how the roots are developing there in the tray. That's a really good success story, that lettuce. Here's some lettuce I put into the garden, into my compost as well. These are the straw flowers. We had a look at them earlier, so I've already planted these now. This is in my front garden. So the straw flowers are looking great. I'm really happy with them. We've got them on both sides here. I've also planted some marigolds in there as well, which you can see coming up amongst the straw flowers. So these seeds are probably not quite as fast growing in the full sun, and they look a little bit better in the shade. So probably just a bit of a difference in how the plant behaves in the different light conditions. But straw flowers looking absolutely great at the moment.